Mike Hassell is former general manager of audio publisher Knowledge Products. With degrees in engineering from Georgia Tech, business from Harvard University, and liberal arts from Vanderbilt, Mike steadily pursues very broad interests like the proverbial Renaissance man. He's a veteran executive and board member of several dozen startups and early stage businesses in the information, health, and biotech industries. A native Tennessean, Mike's musical ability is quite modest compared to some of his neighbors, and he has two adult children and lives with his wife in Nashville, Tennessee. And as we prepare to delve into our conversation on an interesting topic at hand, balancing values and vision, navigating human relationships with Mike Hassell, with a tinge of leadership as well. Here's an exciting twist. Let us tickle his brain first. So, Mike, get ready for a rapid fire round of random words. I'll mention a few, and I would love to hear the first thing that comes to your mind in response without thinking much. If you're ready, let's get started.
Yes, let's do it.
Right. So here comes the first word: curiosity.
Me.
Invention.
Powerful.
Future.
Promising.
Book.
Deep trade-offs.
Movie.
Saving Private Ryan.
Aliens.
Imaginary.
Universe.
Vast.
Leadership.
Hard.
Role model.
Thomas Jefferson.
Last one is success.
Personal.
Wonderful. This is one of the fastest rapid fire rounds which I have conducted so far. And thank you so much for participating in it so sportily. And before I officially welcome you to the show, let me welcome the audience. So, folks, you have tuned into the Guiding Voice podcast series where we embark on transformative conversations for a better future. I'm your host, Naveen Samala, dedicated to making the world a better place through valuable discussions that add value not only to your life but also to your career. And thank you so much for tuning in. Mike, hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice TGV podcast. How are you doing today? Super thrilled to have you.
I'm great, and I'm better for being here. I really am looking forward to this.
Same here, Mike. And let's begin. Let's start with your success mantra. So please share with us the top 3 things that I've attributed to your success so far.
Well, one is curiosity. That was in your list. I've been curious since I was born. I was born into a family of engineers and wanted to be like my Uncle Bill, who developed the barcode scanners for IBM.
Wow.
But halfway through business school, through engineering school, I got interested in humanities and being more broadly exposed. So this combination of science and humanities has marked really my existence in the many decades since. And the third thing is I was introspective as a child, introverted, and my mom even sent me to the Dale Carnegie course to get me outward. I have learned to be more extroverted and more engaging, and it's a gift because every new person that I meet is valuable, and I'm grateful that I'm not hemmed in by that original kind of shyness.
Superb. And Mike, your career spans both engineering and business. You mentioned you had the right combination of science, humanities, and management. So how did your experiences at Procter & Gamble and in IT startups shape your perspective on human relationships and deep trade-offs?
So, when you're trained as an engineer, you have tremendous analytical horsepower, but a lot of engineers don't have great interpersonal skills. They don't care what the customer needs. They just say, give me the problem and let me solve it. That's not all engineers, but it's some. Some of our friends are admissions, and management at the local business school here at Vanderbilt. And they tell me this is the great strength and weakness of engineers. So that was me when I started thinking about being better about the humanities. And when I got to Procter & Gamble, they basically buttered me up to tell me how great I am to be recruited. And I got there and they basically said, I don't care what you think. Tell me what the customer thinks. And it was such a valuable reorientation to instead of speculating about what I feel and what I think and what let's do, it's not about me. It's about the customer. And my colleagues there were people like Scott Cook, who's founded Intuit. Now people know as TurboTax. Meg Whitman went and turned around eBay for Pierre Omidyar. Steve Ballmer and Jeff Immelt were on the same brand group. That's the CEO of Microsoft and GE, respectively. Steve Case was there. They all took this. He did AOL, if anyone doesn't know. They all took this orientation to the customer and took it into a high-tech world that tended to think, I know what's best, and if somebody doesn't know how to use my thing, too bad for them. they don't deserve it, right? That's a caricature of an engineering mindset. A better mindset is Scott Cook's, where he stood at the end of the checkout line at a computer store and said, "Can I follow you home and see what your experience is like installing my product?" And if they had a problem, it was their problem. It was his problem because he hadn't made it easy.
Wow, that's so inspiring. And now I'm curious to understand, having you worked alongside with the tech leaders like Steve Ballmer and Meg Whitman. So, what lessons from your time at Procter and Gamble do you think contributed most to their success in the tech industry?
Well, it all begins with paying attention to the customer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I ended up I didn't like big companies because there's just too much people looking over your shoulder, and I'm too independent to really tolerate that. So I spent my career in entrepreneurial ventures. And, one of the big lessons I learned from those two things together is new ventures and business expansion is about discovery. It's not about a plan that we enforce on the world. It's about asking questions to see what can change. We invented a lot of things scientifically at Vanderbilt when I worked there, and entrepreneurs walk in our office to start a business. But that's 10% of the battle, getting into the mindset of the customer, what their problems are, how this corrects their problems. They really don't care that you've invented something that's cool and could be done, could do this. They want to solve this month's problem. And if you don't understand what this month's problem is for the customer, you're way behind. The task of changing their priorities and educating them is overwhelming. So getting in touch with the customer is something P&G did real well, what we had to do in our startup ventures too, or we failed. And that means not just knowing a conceptual customer, what's their name, what's their phone number, how can I talk to them and test what I think they think, right? It's very visceral and specific.
I think that's a great idea. And in fact, there is a lot to learn by all the startup owners out there. Really, this is an inspiring story of how people can build things by merely focusing on customer experience, right? So I think this is the heights of customer experience that was offered, and very great to know that.
Let me add one thing, Naveen.
Sure.
Sometimes people don't know what they want.
Yeah.
So Steve Jobs was big on inventing things that people didn't know what they want. He would have failed if he had submitted to what I just suggested, right? He was visionary, but that's really hard to do. And so there's a trade-off even here. You don't always. There are people that failed in the cell phone business because they were asking the wrong question. I think AT&T sold it off because people said, "I don't want a phone in my car," and then they had to buy it back once they asked the right question, and realities had changed. So I don't want to be too overboard on listening to customers. There are ways of inventing things, but you're out on the end of the diving board if you think that everybody's going to listen to you about changing their life.
Got it. Also, Mike, in your book, Deep Tradeoffs, you talk about restoring balance and respect in relationships, right? So how can we apply this concept to our interactions, whether in personal life or business or technology?
Okay, so I was managing a business on the great ideas of history, and we had done philosophy and science, religion, political thought, and we were doing a series on moral problems of our age. And at age 40, roughly, I had this aha moment that my training has not equipped me in science to deal with this, because there is not an answer. There's no algorithm, there's no formula, there's no process or structure to get at a solution. Rather, these are conflicting values that are never going to be fully resolved. And for 30 years now, I've been thinking about this, and I've identified about 30 what I call deep trade-offs. They're beyond pro and con, strength and weakness, cost benefit, et cetera. Those are the kind of surface level, but the deeper ones are, do we struggle or do we find peace? Do we emphasize liberty or equality? Things like that. And so the point of this is that there are these competing values, and every value has a competitor, has a rival. And developing this theory that no matter what value you name, there's something competing with, even kindness. A lot of coaches will tell you kindness will not get them where they want to go, right? They need to be a little harsher than being kind. Sometimes with our kids, we need to be stronger than just being their friend. So every value has a rival. And once we start to think this way, you gain respect for other people, looking at a choice you might make in a different situation. It means that your opponents are not stupid or evil. They see different applications of the same things we're struggling with. And one of the consequences of that then is that we're not going to convince people to do things our way, just like they're not going to convince us, unless first we become friends And then we start to listen to one another and respect one another. And, I might change toward you a little bit, Naveen, and you might change toward me a little bit. But we're locked in this adversary. I'm going to tell you what you need to know. It's not going to break.
Got it. And also you mentioned the importance of understanding our own beliefs and behaviors, right? So could you share an example of how this self-awareness can transform our interactions with others?
I've learned a lot from a psychologist named Jonathan Haidt, Haidt, on this topic. And he basically talks about the subconscious as a really driving force in the way we defend our beliefs. Mm-hmm. And so when somebody challenges our beliefs, we don't really listen impartially and gather the evidence and make a decision about whether they're right or we're right. What we do is we dig our heels in and we cherry pick evidence. We want to listen for things that prove we're right, and we want to not listen for things and reject things that challenge that we're right. This is a subconscious impulse. It's known as confirmation bias. Most of us have heard that. There's also a thing called motivated reasoning, where the process is more like an advocate, like a lawyer or a military person wanting to get an outcome rather than a judge or a scout. A scout needs to be impartial and take in evidence that maybe I'm not doing the right thing, right? I'm going to get killed if I don't reassess things here. Yeah. A judge has to be impartial. And so our subconscious is oriented toward this lawyerly, militaristic kind of way of fighting. And it's a subconscious urge that we're not even always aware of. So the point is stepping back and understanding this is our tendency of our subconscious, and we can correct it. And Haidt's metaphor of this is it's like a rider on an elephant. The subconscious is the elephant. It's going to go where it wants to go most of the time. Sometimes the rider, the reason, can redirect it a little bit. But that's kind of a metaphor for the relative power and strength of these two things going on in our head. I find it marvelous, and I recognize it in my own behavior.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. What are some common trade-offs between cherished values that you have observed in your career, and how can recognizing these help bridge the divides?
Well, my favorite branch of philosophy is called epistemology. It's how do we know what we know? Mm-hmm. And, in the end, there's knowledge and there's uncertainty. And there's a deep trade-off there between confidence in what we think we know and willingness to challenge what we know that's not true. And that is, suffused my life since the beginning. There's justice and mercy. Most of us want justice, which can be roughly translated as fairness. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times demanding accountability and retribution and things like that obstruct any kind of reconciliation or forgiveness that can let bygones be bygones. You can't do both at the same time, demand accountability and forgive. Yeah. So which do you choose in order to move forward? The choice is balance, and we have to make careful judgments about which ones of those to do. Open mind or closed mind. All of us think about being open-minded, but there's a place to be closed. I'm definitely committed to X. I'm comfortable with Y, and I like to live within the boundaries of Y. So, there's belief and skepticism. There's integration and separation. We combine things and centralize them, and sometimes we spin them out and decentralize them. There's no right answer for that. Businesses are constantly doing one or the other because there are competing benefits to each of those solutions.
Yeah.
It's just a few that come to mind. I can keep going with up to 30.
Yeah, I got it. And with the limited amount of time, I think at least if you could scratch the surface, and people that are curious, right, they can purchase your book and learn a lot, gain or acquire tons of wisdom out there. And Mike, you also emphasize that disagreement, when properly managed, can lead to growth, right? So how can individuals or organizations leverage disagreements for positive outcomes?
Well, one of the reasons consultants like at McKinsey operate in teams is that people are poor critics of their own thinking. And so you need someone else to see what you're not seeing. And so that's ingrained in their practices, right? We need similar things in business. That's why we have committees. It's why we have meetings, because not every person, like I used to tell the people that work for me, if we all agree, then most of us are redundant. I don't need a bunch of people that think the same way I do. I can't get better that way. So one way I look at this is that disagreement is built into the human condition. If we're free people, particularly in free societies, democracies, disagreement is just baked into the nature of things. And so disagreement is not the problem. It's coercion that's the problem, where I'm going to make you live by the way I think we ought to live. And so I think liberty is a solution to a lot of this, and openness to letting people live in ways we might find disagreeable or even offensive. But it's not up to me to tell you, unless you're instructing somebody else, that you shouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
It diminishes the distinction between right and wrong.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on that and thinking we're going to appeal to science to tell us what's right and wrong, we understand there's a more limited application of those things, and we've got to balance trade-offs. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. And as an IT leader, how do you see technology either hindering or facilitating these deeper connections and understanding among people?
Well, IT obviously has made us so more connected globally, instantly. My son dated a French girl, and he would speak for hours for free overnight, from Tennessee to there. That wasn't quite possible when I was his age. So these marvelous benefits from all this connection. But look, it also produces mediation, and we say things to each other through mediation that we wouldn't do in person. This is real clear in social media, that the decency we would show to one another in person is not there often in these asymmetric engagements, particularly things like Twitter, or where you're not looking at one, even just looking at you across what we're using now. I'm not going to treat you as harshly if I disagree with you than I would if you're not there and you're an abstraction rather than a real person.
Good one. I loved both the examples, and we have had an incredible conversation so far, and it's time for us to add some more excitement and some more spice to the episode. So if you are ready, let's kick off this second rapid fire round.
Okay,
here comes the first bullet. So Mike, if you could have one gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say?
Be curious, tell other people.
Be curious, tell other people. Wow, superb. And if you were to swap your life with someone for a day, who would it be and why?
Well, I've always admired Thomas Jefferson, and so that's an example of a dead person. But a live person, probably Jonathan Haidt, who is this social psychologist that has so many insights about what's going on in our head.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to soak them all in.
Wow. I would like to know more about him, and that's great. And can you describe yourself in just one word?
Curiosity. Curious. My mother says I was born breech and then ultimately a cesarean section because I wanted to see where I was going. So that's been since birth.
Okay. And two truths and one lie about you.
Two truths and one lie?
Yeah.
I have lots of interests. Very few things are not of interest to me. Pretty fun to be around most of the time. And I guess the lie would be I'm not as good looking as I think I am.
Okay.
People ask me what I look like, and I tell them Robert Redford. I'm not one to say I'm on this side of my face.
Good one. And complete this phrase 3 times. Never have I ever
taken street drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's in them. I don't trust them. Don't need them.
Okay. So, and here comes the last one for the rapid fire. What is one electronic gadget that you'd like to see or invent yourself?
I'd like something that manages planning versus spontaneity. I've lived out of a calendar all my life and done what my calendar says I need to do at 11 o'clock today, and it tends to reduce spontaneity. And the nature of organizing it reduces spontaneity. I don't know how you would do that. If somebody could figure out how to take blood out of my veins without a needle, I would like that. It's not quite IT, but I give way too many blood samples over time and give blood at the Red Cross. I'd like for them to do it without the stick.
This is the most unique response I have received so far on this rapid fire round for this specific question. And Mike, I thoroughly enjoyed the second rapid fire round. And let's flip back to the mainstream. What advice do you have for young professionals looking to follow is similar path of leadership and innovation in IT and beyond?
When I was quite young, I decided that when I get to the end of life, I would rather have failed and tried than to wonder what could have been. Mm-hmm. I've seen this confirmed in there's a book about the regrets of the dying, a woman that works in hospice, and she's top 5, and I quote her in my book. Mm-hmm. That's one of them, living according to your own life. And that means accepting failure, and that means We know that we're not quite as special as we think we are. We need other people's insights to improve our own. But being out there and taking chances and discovering what we're capable of, I think is like I used to tell people I hired, look, a new business is like riding a roller coaster standing up. And it's pretty thrilling and it's terrifying. And to go along with that, when you succeed, you've done it, it's yours, it's the greatest feeling in the world. When you fail, it's yours, you're blaming to be blamed, and it's horrible. So you live life at a quite wide range when you accept that, and I think that's a good way to live.
Superb. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank you for the amazing nuggets of wisdom. And I enjoyed talking to you, Mike. And how is your experience being hosted on the Guiding Voice podcast?
It's fantastic. You ask such good questions, and I like thinking about these things. And I wish I could start another one right now.
Yeah, definitely look forward to hosting you again in future. And thank you. Really appreciate you taking time for sharing your wisdom with our audience, and I wish you all the best in everything that you do, Mike.
Thank you, Naveen, for having me on your show.
Yeah, most welcome. And friends, that was our episode with Mike Hassell. And before we jump into the fun trivia section, we have a quick request. In case if you haven't already subscribed to TGV, the Guiding Voice podcast, please subscribe from wherever you have tuned in, because subscribing keeps you updated on new episodes. And also, if you have enjoyed the conversation and found it useful, please share with at least 3 of your friends or colleagues who would also like TGV, the Guiding Voice. So spread the knowledge and help grow others just like you. All right, now let's hop into the trivia segment. Having had amazing conversation with an IT leader turned author, let me bring you 3 key points about charismatic leadership. First one is about Max Weber's concept. Charismatic leadership was conceptualized by German sociologist Max Weber as one of the 3 types of authority alongside traditional and legal rational authority. Weber described charismatic authority as being based on the extraordinary personal qualities and appeal of the leader. And second is about impact and influence. Charismatic leaders have a profound impact on their followers due to their ability to inspire and motivate with their vision, passion, and persuasive communication. And they often create a strong emotional connection and loyalty among followers, leading to high levels of commitment and engagement. And third is about modern application. And in contemporary leadership studies, charismatic leadership is viewed as a distinctive leadership style characterized by a leader's ability to inspire and influence others through their personal charm, confidence, and vision. While effective in rallying support and driving change, charismatic leadership should be balanced with other leadership qualities for sustainable success. So that's it from my side, but I would love to hear from you about charismatic leaders that you might have worked with or encountered in your career. If you'd like to mention about them, feel free to comment if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you have found this episode on social media platforms, you can comment there. I would love to know more about charismatic leaders with whom you have worked with, and if possible, I would like to bring them onto this show. So folks, thank you so much once again for tuning in and also for being part of our awesome TGV family. We would love to hear from you. So do not hesitate to share your ideas, feedback, topic recommendations, or guest speaker suggestions either through social media platforms or through email. You can email us at theguidingvoiceforyou@gmail.com, for as in digit 4 and you as in letter U. I'm your host Naveen Samala, a lifelong learner, and my goal is to have impactful conversations that improve not only your life but also your career. And until next time, take care. Stay inspired. Remember, the future holds great things because the best is yet to come. Goodbye for now. See you in the next episode with another amazing guest.